Hello, and welcome to episode 12 of a Disney Life podcast. We're so glad that you're here. My name is Rachel, and I'm joined by my co host, Missy. Hello, Missy. How are you doing?
Hi, Rachel. I'm pretty great. How are you today?
Great. Thank you. And we are joined today by our special guest and a friend of ours named Angie. And hi, Angie.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Angie recently went on a very exciting trip. She took an Adventures by Disney England France itinerary, and she's going to be talking to us about that time today. And we'll be sharing some photos on our socials as well from her trip, so you can see those too. So, Angie, how about starting out telling us a little bit about yourself and your Disney travel experience so far?
So, obviously, a huge Disney fan. We are on the West Coast near Seattle. So, Disneyland is our home park and where we usually visit, but had also been to Walt Disney World as well. And so, initially, this trip came out of wanting to celebrate our 50th birthdays with just kind of a bigger trip. It was actually my husband who came up with, why don't we do Paris? And so kind of going from there, I happened to look at the Adventures by Disney itinerary for England and France. And knowing we had just a really limited amount of time, I thought that was a great way to really fit in a lot into a short amount of time.
I love that. I think that sounds amazing and definitely a great birthday present. I think I may have to come up with a birthday present like that for myself.
Well, it actually kind of turned into something else because, like I said, we planned it as something for our 50th birthdays. However, that was, I guess, a little over a year ago or so when we brought it up. His birthday's in May, mine's in August. So we were kind of like, let's go somewhere in the middle to celebrate them both, which was actually last year. But then the Summer Olympics were happening in Paris, and we decided we didn't really want to deal with all that. So we did postpone it for a year. So going this summer, we're kind of celebrating 51 instead. But we ended up making it in July so that we were also there for our anniversary. So it was kind of a big celebration of everything.
I love that.
And shout out to him for coming up with Paris as an idea. I mean, what a guy.
We have regretted it afterwards, yes. But I was like, okay, now that you've said it, it's happening.
So for this trip, then it was just the two of you going as a couple, correct?
Just the two of us, which when we went on the trip, knowing that it was just the two of us going, and also like as a teacher for my summer vacations, we tend to kind of do things that are kind of kid free. I mean, besides Disney, of course, but we like to enjoy some adult all inclusives and things to kind of get a break. But they do offer adult inclusive exclusive trips, but all the dates, of course, are during the school year for those. So we were with quite a few kids on the trip, but really didn't diminish the atmosphere around. All the kids were very well behaved, which was nice. I think the youngest was 8. But it was mostly families on the trip. There was only one other couple that was traveling without kids.
And I think really what locks it in for guests to choose Disney when they're traveling without kids, even if they don't want to be with kids, is just the Disney difference of that VIP attention that you get with everything. So I'm sure you'll be getting into some of that as we discuss your travels and exactly what you did. But in case any of you are wondering why would they want to go when they don't have kids with them in tow on a trip with other kids, that's why, because Disney really takes everything to the next level with their Adventures by Disney vacations. So I'm eager to hear how all of that worked out for Angie and if having the kids there was a problem for her or not.
All right. So should we just start walking through your days at this point? Because it's very different trip from like going to a park or something like that. Because you were moving around pretty much the entire time, I'm sure.
Yeah. They definitely, like I said, you're fitting a lot into a short amount of time. So you are spending your days pretty much on the go. They tell you right from the get-go, you signed up for an adventure, not a vacation. So this is not the type of trip where you're going to rest. You're really going in and seeing all that you can see and using your time there to the fullest. So one thing, we did choose to go a day early. First of all, just getting there internationally just to be safe with flights and everything. Went a day early, and there was also some things that I wanted to do in London that were not included on the trip that we kind of fit in the day before. So we did get there early and do that. So, and it was kind of nice too, just making sure that once we jumped into the trip, because you have those full days, we were kind of rested up, made sure we, weren't suffering from jet lag or any of that. So the first day that the adventure started, we met up with our guides that morning. They kind of had just an open window. So whenever people were arriving, you could check in with them. So we met our guides. And one of the things that they do is have you choose your menus because you're having a lot of group meals on the trip. I would say roughly about half the meals were included with your Adventures by Disney. So for those group meals, they have you choose your menus ahead of time so that when we go and sit down, it's really a lot quicker to get through a meal with, we had 39 people on our trips. Serving 39 people quickly and getting through those group meals was a lot quicker when everybody has already chosen what they want.
Oh,
And did
wow.
you find there was a good variety of options to choose from? Like it wasn't a burden on you in any way to choose ahead of time, was it?
And actually, we were a little concerned about that to begin with because my husband and I are both pretty picky eaters. And so, London, we weren't as worried about, but kind of looking at, what typical meals were like in Paris, we were kind of a little worried because we're like, we're not going to eat any of that. But there actually were quite a few choices. And I think there was only one meal on the trip that we weren't thrilled with. Most of the meals ended up being very good. The other thing is that they really work with any restrictions to your diet as well. I know on this trip, I have some food allergies, and there was another guest on the trip that had very severe and a lot of allergies. And they were really great at accommodating both of those, making sure that when we stopped at different places, the restaurants came out and double checked with us as far as what was okay, what wasn't. Mine was just some minor modifications, but I know for the other guest, sometimes he had to have completely different meals than what was offered on the menu, and they were able to do that.
So, Angie, you mentioned that you had met up with your adventure guide. For anybody who's not familiar with Adventures by Disney, they do have adventure guides for you that will be with you throughout your trip. And these are a few people that Disney hand selects who are familiar with the areas, they know the ins and the outs, and they're going to be there to help see you through your entire adventure to make sure everything goes smoothly. After that initial meet up with your guide, tell us about the rest of your first day and what you experienced.
So the rest of that day was kind of that was one of the things that we had on our own throughout the day, which we were in London, and I'm a huge Harry Potter fan, so we did the Harry Potter tour at Warner Brothers. And that was kind of our day's activity on our own. That was not through Adventures by Disney.
I was about to say, did Disney, did Disney
Yeah.
taking you to Harry Potter?
But so we went and did that during the day, and then when we got back to the hotel, there was a welcome dinner that night. So they had a catered dinner at the hotel, and that was a chance to, again, learn a little bit more about the guides that we were going to be spending a whole week with. We had Lewis, who was from the UK. So obviously he was expert kind of in all things London while we were there. Our other guide was Ryan, who is from the US, but is a French teacher and had lived in Paris for at least a year, I think it was. So he was kind of our expert in Paris, even, taught us some French phrases along the way that we might need to know. It was really helpful just to be able to text them questions if we were out on our own, where can we go find this or where should we have dinner? They were both great with giving us recommendations no matter where we were. The other thing during the dinner is it gave you a chance just to meet all the other people who were on your trip. So we had 11 other families for a total of 39 people that were on our trip, which the max is 40. So we were, pretty close to what that max was for one of their groups going out. So everybody kind of introduced themselves and talked a little bit about what they were looking forward to on the trip, where they were from, kind of that initial introduction in front of the group. And then we kind of had, just time to kind of circulate and get to know people.
That sounds like a lot of fun. And I feel like it's the kind of thing you need to be aware ahead of time. You're going to be with the group. It's going to be a pretty small group, and you will get to know each other. But 39 people is quite a few people to get to know. So did you end up meeting anyone who you feel like you'll stay in contact with? Or was it more like the two of you stayed on your own and didn't really? socialize a whole lot with other guests?
I mean, kind of a little bit of both. I mean, obviously, we're celebrating our anniversary. So there was, a lot of times that we kind of wanted time on our own. And I wouldn't say that we really got close enough to anyone that we would be in touch afterwards. But there were certainly other families that we gravitated to just to visit with, either at a group dinner or just, when you're out and sightseeing. Some that we did some of the evenings that you're on your own, we did kind of pair up with some other people and go to some similar places. And like I said, on this trip, most of the people had, kids and families. There was only one other couple that was on their own. And
Okay.
it was actually the family that we interacted with the least. So we
Oh,
did go with, all the people that had kids. And some of those were, high school or college age. I mean, whether it was because we had people who were from nearby areas. There were actually quite a few people from the West Coast on this trip. And so, whether it was just talking about our areas or kids that were similar ages or just our love of Disney, which came up a lot in talking with the other family.
I would imagine. So it's great to know that it doesn't really matter what kind of trip you're taking personally. It can kind of mash in there however you want it to. You mentioned the other couple kind of stayed more on their own. You guys mixed around a bit. So I think that's helpful information to anybody considering taking an Adventures by Disney trip.
Yeah,
Yeah, I have
you
a
can really
question.
make it
So,
what you want it to be.
did you feel like your adventure guides were pretty accessible throughout the entire trip for you as you mentioned, time on your own and everything?
Yeah, absolutely. No, you had text messaging with both the guides, and so I mean, like I said, whether it was a random question like where should we go for dinner, or my husband happens to travel with a CPAP, and we're like, okay, where can we go get distilled water in Paris? And when we asked the hotel, it's not called distilled water there. And they had no idea what we were asking for. And so we're like, texting them, what do we need to do for this? And like I said, they're there for everything, anything that you can need. And even anticipating what you might need. Cause one of the nights we saw them in the lobby and we're like, okay, we're gonna head out for dinner, but we're not sure what we're gonna do afterwards. And our guide Ryan was like, well, did you know that there's a Disney store like a mile up the road? And I was like, I did not know that, but we will definitely be going there now.
So, Angie, I'm curious how they handled the CPAP situation. When you asked them about that, did they direct you where to go and you handled it, or were they able to handle that need for you in each location you were at?
So in London, it was taken care of only because the hotel that we were staying at in London did contact me prior to the stay. Like I said, we went a day early before the tour actually started. But we did book the same hotel that we were going to be staying in for the Adventures by Disney. And so the hotel had actually contacted me about a week before the trip because they said, okay, we see that you have two reservations, but they were not in the same room type. And so they gave me the option to upgrade the room that I had booked on my own. And if I paid a few more dollars, we could upgrade to the other room type and stay in the same room the whole time, which was definitely nice. And so while they were talking to me, they also just asked if there was anything else that we needed. And so I did mention to them that we would need water, and that hotel provided it. So
Okay.
they had it in our room for us. And if we ran out, all we had to do was call the concierge and get some more. But once we got to Paris, that wasn't something that they provided. And we had the little language issue, even not, the hotel not quite understanding what we wanted. They just kept sending us to the bar to get like water to drink,
Bottled water.
not what we want. So our guide eventually was able to, tell us, okay, it's called this in Paris, which was like eau de mineralized or something, not distilled water. And you will find it in the cleaning section because apparently sleep machines aren't such a big deal there, but that's what they use in the iron and for the steam in the iron. So that's where we had to go. But they told us where the grocery store was, right behind the hotel, and that this was what we needed to find and that it would be in this section. So they gave us everything that we needed.
That's wonderful. So something that you mentioned about the hotel room, I'm guessing Disney did not put you in entry level rooms. It sounds like that you kind of had upgraded rooms.
Yeah, the one that we had booked on our own was just a standard room, and through Disney it was called a premium room. So
Okay.
not sure exactly what the difference was because we never saw the standard room. So it was nice just to be given the option to upgrade so that we could stay in the same room the whole time.
That is nice, and it's good to know, like Rachel was getting at there, that Disney doesn't start off on the bottom of the line with what they're offering you. It's going to be a more elevated experience. So that's good to know.
Yeah.
All right. So go ahead and continue to lead us through the rest of your trip after that first night.
So after that first night, so the next day they start you out quickly. We had probably our busiest day right as you set out in the morning. So first of all, knowing that you're going to have some early mornings because again, they're trying to put a lot into your day, but also some of the experiences they're giving you, like you talked about the, VIP kind of part of it, is that there are places that you were going to be able to go into before they opened, which means that you had to get an early start to your day. So most days were somewhere between 6:45 and 7:30. You were meeting at the motor coach. So first day, I think, was a 7:30 day that we had to have breakfast done and be ready to get on the motor coach, which again, if you're thinking like, you've been on a school bus or, whatever before, really nice motor coaches, really comfortable, air conditioned, which was nice because it was very hot there. So nice quality motor coach that you're traveling around on. And as we got on that morning, we had not only our Adventures by Disney guides, but they had a local guide, Steven, who joined us. And so anytime you were on the motor coach, they have a microphone at the front and they're kind of using that driving time to kind of give you information on the places that you're heading to. So it was nice. That morning we were starting out at the Tower of London. So as we're driving there, Stephen's really giving us the history of the tower and, some of those things that we needed to know before we got there. So when we arrived at the Tower of London, first thing they do is photo ops. Usually whenever you get anywhere, your guides are always going to be taking pictures. It's nice that they're taking a lot of pictures for you. So, if you're traveling, whether it was just us as a couple or with your whole family, everybody can be in the picture because they're doing those pictures for you. And also are very happy to take pictures on your phone as well. But everything usually starts out with those photo ops so that you can, get your proof that you've been there. So we
And
started
then
out.
they send you the photos, do they, Angie, at the conclusion?
At the end, you get a link, and so you're able to download all the photos. Guide told us on the last evening, get ready because he had over 1,000 photos
Wow.
in that link for us. So, which of course, I mean, some of them are just other families that are not ones that you're gonna probably put in your album, but definitely a good amount of photos from everywhere that you've been, of both the people and the places that you're seeing.
And those downloads are included in the price you paid for the adventure, correct?
Yes,
Okay, that's
absolutely.
great.
Absolutely. So at the Tower of London, first thing we had a private meeting with one of the beefeaters. And so they were able to come out and just talk to our group and kind of explain a little bit about what their role is at the tower and showed us the ravens that are at the tower there. And, again, felt very exclusive in that we're the only group that's out there, talking to them. And then led us inside to go and see the crown jewels. And this was definitely one of my highlights of the trip. And as we went inside, I knew people had told me before, there's this little moving sidewalk and you get pushed along and, can kind of see those jewels. But when we were going in, it was before it was open to the public. The moving sidewalk was turned off. We all got to go up and really take our time looking at each piece. They had an expert there who was giving us all the history. They would tell us everything about, if we're looking at a certain crown, when was it made? Who was it made for? How many times has it been worn? What is it made out of? What's special about these jewels? I mean, really giving you all of the facts about these things. So that really made it such a better experience than we could have had just going on our own to look at those crown jewels. You just got so much more out of it.
I love that because I have been to the Tower of London before, and I do remember the sidewalk
Yeah.
and it was so packed in there anyways, and then you really you're being herded through there,
Mhm.
so, we just got a very quick glimpse before moving on.
Yeah, yeah. No, it was definitely in depth. The other thing is Adventures by Disney gives you what they call whisper boxes. And so we had like the little earbud that you're wearing the whole time. And so, no, if it was our local guides or the experts at the places that we were visiting, they all had the whisper boxes. So, also, like you said, with a group of 39, it's kind of a large group. There were times when they would split us into smaller groups, but even if you were in the big group, you didn't miss anything because you always had your whisper box. You could always hear what, the information that was being given. So that was really nice.
How were they on so last time I was at the Tower of London, they were pretty we took a tour given by a beef eater, which was fun,
Mhm.
but they were very strict about where photos could be taken, things like that. Were they are they still as strict? Were you told, like, "You can't take photos in here," things of that nature?
Just the crown jewels. You could take all the pictures you wanted outside. They did tell us once we went in to see the crown jewels, no pictures or videos there. But after we were done with that portion, they gave us a little bit of free time to just, go and explore if there were other places around the tower you wanted to go to. All the other places you could take pictures is really just for the crown jewels.
Okay.
And they did do that. A lot of the places that we went, it's kind of a nice because you had kind of a mix of the guided tour, where we're all staying together. They're giving us all the information. But then there was usually always some time too that you could kind of split off. And if there was, different things you wanted to go back and look at, or, just kind of explore some of the other areas, hit the gift shop, whatever you needed, there was always kind of a little bit of free time built in as well so that you could go and do your own thing after the group part.
Alright, so take us after what happened.
So from there, like I said, the crown jewel's really one of my favorite things. But just kind of touching on our other stuff for that day. From there, we went and took a speedboat ride on the River Thames. And I did not think I was going to enjoy the speedboat as much. I'm not a big water person, don't usually enjoy boats so much, sometimes get a little sick on them. And so the speedboat part, I was a little scared of actually, but it was really, really fun. And again, you're kind of getting a different view of some of the places that we had walked by the day before on our own, but just kind of seeing all the places from the water. And again, the driver of the boat was also somebody who was giving you information on all the places that you were going by. So that was really fun. After that, we went and had our first lunch at a traditional pub. So, of course, lots of fish and chips to be had while we were there. And just kind of, again, one of those nice things that you don't have to worry about all of your meals, having some of those meals that are included, first of all, cost wise, as far as knowing that some of those things are included and not having to think about where to eat. Because if there's anything in my life at home that I despise, it's always like, what to make for dinner, or even if we're going out, where are we going to go to dinner? And sometimes I just like to not think about it. So I loved that there was, so many meals that were included that they're just like, okay, this is the place you want to go to. If you're in London and you want fish and chips, like this is where you go. So I appreciated having a lot of those meals that were included there. After the lunch, then we were off to St. Paul's Cathedral. And this was kind of one of our first glimpses throughout many on the trip where you just walk into places and it's just absolutely breathtaking. Every place that we saw, we're like, it can't possibly get better than this. And it just continually did. It's really just so amazing to go into some of these places and just see the beauty that is there. So at St. Paul's, we did have part of the tour that again the whole group was together. They kind of give you some of that background and history on the cathedral, and then they had a choice. And so there was many times during the trip where the group would split off and you could choose from a couple things. So at St. Paul's, you could choose to walk the stairs up to the dome, or you could choose to go underneath to the crypt. And so our guides, would split up and each of them take a group so you could kind of choose which thing you were more interested in or just avoiding stairs and and go and visit what you wanted. So it was kind of nice to have an option in some of those. So obviously I chose the crypt.
Okay, I
um
was gonna ask, so what did you choose?
they said it was like 500 and something stairs to get up to the dome. And again, this was our first day. We are like, hitting it hard. We had already done a lot that day. And so 500 stairs to the dome right after lunch just didn't sound great. And honestly, the crypt was kind of fascinating to me anyways. And so that just sounded like a better option for me. Yeah. So I
It's
chose.
great that you have options though. I love that with Adventures by Disney, there's something for everyone to do. You could have that very adventurous 500 stair plus option, or you can have an probably equally as exciting option, but not have to have as much mobility involved. So, and that's a great concern for people. So it's great to know there's a couple exciting options there.
Definitely inclusive for all. And even within families, there were some families where maybe the mom took the younger one who didn't want to do all the stairs and went underneath, but then dad took the older ones and, trekked up all the stairs. So even within families, some of them would split up and do different things.
Hmm.
So after St. Paul's, then we were off to Buckingham Palace. And so that was one that was just a photo op from the outside. We were able just to see it from out there. But again, because you have the guides there, they're, telling you about the building. So, you're not just looking at it going, oh, it's a gorgeous building, but really learning more about it. And our guide happened to tell us because of the flag that they had flying on the building, told him that the king was actually inside. So
Okay.
definitely something we wouldn't have known, on our own if we were just, to go and look. But had our little photo op there. And then after that, we loaded the coach to go back to the hotel, and then you had the evening on your own. So this was where when you were ready for dinner, we asked our guide for a recommendation. And again, like I said, we're very picky eaters. So we're like, okay, we don't need the authentic London experience. Just where can we get a good pizza? And they still have those recommendations for you. And so this was the night where, we went and got our pizza and we came back to the hotel and we were like, do we want to do anything else? Like some people were going to the theater. We weren't quite up for the theater. So we're like, kind of, what do we do? And our guide happened to see us down there and let us know about the Disney store. So that's where our adventures led us that evening, was just to the Disney store, do a little shopping, and then come back and rest up for the next day because
So
we
I have a
definitely have.
question. I know that, you can find the itineraries online, but did you receive a pretty specific itinerary prior to your trip? Just in case, I know that you came in a day early to get some things done that you wanted to, but would you have been able to plan like an evening on your own, knowing we should be done by 6 so we could plan something?
We did not have a lot of specific times beforehand.
Okay.
You do get a handbook prior to your adventure. I think it might have been at like a month out, but it really gave you just kind of the breakdown of what you're doing each day, not really times. And they said they kind of do that on purpose because things can change and they may have to, adjust things according to, if some places, closed or, whatever may be happening. Sometimes they have to change things on the fly. So they didn't really give us a lot of times beforehand. What they would do is each evening, they would kind of let us know what was happening for the next day. And you could always ask. But we were able to book things just kind of last minute. A lot of the families that were going to the theater, they just got on that day and booked it when they were like, oh, we're going to be done at 6 tonight. We can book a 7:30 show.
Oh, wow.
When we one of the nights later on we decided to do a cruise, we booked it the night before. So not a lot of things that you could really plan ahead of time, although if you did plan something, there was one other family that had booked like something at like the Dior museum or something that they were really interested in, and so they had booked it ahead of time. And normally we would have still been doing stuff with the tour, and they just chose to break off early. So instead of getting on the motor coach and coming back and doing whatever like last activity we had for the day, they just told the guides, we're leaving from here. We're going to get an Uber and, go do our own thing. And so you're absolutely welcome to do that if you do want to break off from the group and do something different. If there's something you're not interested in, you do have that option. But specific times was kind of hard to really plan on your own. But we
Yeah.
found most stuff we were able to book last minute, and it wasn't a big deal.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. So that that was like a very full like first day of, getting the adventure underway. So the next morning, as we started out, first thing was Hampton Court Palace. And as we were going there, this was another place where we got to go in a little bit early before it opened to the public. It wasn't as exclusive. There were some other tour groups that were in there with us, but not an overwhelming amount of people, because as we came out of Hampton Court Palace, the entire road was full of school buses, and there was just hundreds and hundreds of kids. This was kind of their last week of school over there. So everybody getting those field trips in. It was just hordes of people when we came out. So we were still thankful for, kind of that small group experience we did have. There was a couple other tour groups, but definitely not like when it's open to the public. So, and at Hampton Court, that was one where they did split us into smaller groups. And so, like I said, at this point, we had our 2 adventure guides. We had our local guide, Stephen, who is with us. And then at Hampton Court, we had 2 more of their guides. So they kind of split us into 2 groups and led us around, which was also kind of nice because they kind of personalized the tour a little bit to our group. Our tour guide that we had from Hampton Court, she kind of looked at our group and she's like, okay, no young ones in here. Okay, so here is the really juicy fun facts about this place. So it was kind of nice that, they kind of personalize it for your group. And I'm sure the other group with having more kids might have modified it a little bit to make, some things more interesting to the kids. But so we had Hampton Court, which was another one of those places where you're just like in awe of everything that's there, because there's nothing like it in the US. Like you don't see these types of places here. So it was just really remarkable to be able to see all these buildings and just the opulence in all the places. After Hampton Court, we traveled to Windsor. And so first they kind of got us to a spot kind of right by Windsor Castle, and again kind of led us over to give us a little bit of history of the castle and just kind of let us know what was available, because they were going to give us some free time. So they kind of, it was a really cute little area there. And so they kind of, told us where we could go shopping, told us, these are the best 2 souvenir shops if you want to hit that. Some recommendations for lunch. Again, looking at Windsor Castle, they're like, there's the flag that tells us the king is now here. He's following us. And did our little photo op for the castle as well.
It
So,
sounds like Adventures by Disney really put out all the stops if the king is following.
right. It was that VIP
Yeah.
that you get to be with the king. Wherever he goes, we go. But so we were able to, have a nice lunch there, do a little bit of souvenir shopping, just kind of explore Windsor a little bit on our own. And so they give you your time to kind of meet back up, and you're free until then. So we did our own thing there. And then back on the coach, the next place we were headed was this gorgeous estate for some archery. And again, there was all these kind of little things that were not things I would have chosen on my own, if I was kind of creating my own itinerary and booking things. Archery, I don't think would have made my list, but it actually was really fun. I was totally worried I was going to hurt somebody because I have no aim. But they give you a little demonstration and then have some practice. And then we had a fun little competition with the archery, which my team did not win.
Oh.
But it was still really fun and definitely experience, like I said, not something I would have gotten on my own. So I kind of appreciated that they, had things that kind of, pushed you out of your comfort zone a little bit and had you trying some other things that were kind of unique to the area.
I guess
Yeah,
that's
that
what
sounds
makes it
fun.
a true adventure.
Again, they told us that a lot. Yes, it's an adventure, not a vacation. So you are going to be doing some things that maybe you wouldn't do at home, but on Adventures by Disney, you will. Yes. So I think the archery was our last thing for that day. We got back on the coach. And the other thing that's nice is that, every time you get on the coach, the guides are going around with a little basket of snacks. Every morning, every time you get on the coach, they're handing you a bottle of water, all those little things that you don't have to think about. I had actually, my husband has to watch his blood sugar and had packed a ton of snacks. I had all these things in the backpack. I was like so prepared, to make sure he always had something to snack on. We never ate one of them. They always had stuff for us, and it was kind of, neat because they also had like a lot of little snacks that were unique to the area and things that we wouldn't have had otherwise. So that's, just kind of nice. And another thing that, again, you literally have to worry about nothing when you're on this trip. They have thought of it all. And so that was nice every time we got on the motor coach. And this evening, as we got back to the hotel, it was a dinner that was included, but it was a private dinner just for your family. This was also all the kids on the trip, they called junior adventurers. And so this was their junior adventurer night. And so the guides took all the junior adventurers and they got to go hang out in the presidential suite and have dinner and watch a movie with the guides. So the families that were there, kind of gave those couples a chance to kind of have a little date night, even though they were on a family vacation. So I thought, obviously we weren't traveling with kids, but I thought that was a really nice touch, for those that were, they could get their family vacation, but still get, a little bit of grown up time put in there that the guides were taking care of the kids.
Yeah, Disney provided date night. That's
Yes, yes.
wonderful. I love that. That you just mentioned that they think of everything. That really is thinking of everything.
It truly is. And even besides just the date night, as you're going around on the tours, both of our guides were really great at making sure like the kids were engaged, that, if it was like a place where, all the adults were really into hearing the history, but, maybe not as exciting for the kids, the guides would always be, checking in with the kids or like giving them little jobs. Like you'll see in some of my pictures later on, like the Adventures by Disney guides have these paddles that they hold up at the front of the group. So you can always tell, like, where you're walking and make sure you don't lose the group. If any of the kids were like getting a little antsy or whatever, they're like, oh, why don't you carry the paddle for me? Lead everybody. And, which way do you think we should go? Or, kind of giving them little jobs, keeping the kids engaged. So I thought, that was kind of nice for the families all the way through the trip, is that the guides were super, super helpful with making sure everybody was having a good time.
All right, so day 3, is it right?
Kind of our first full day, technically day 4, because
Okay,
we
yes.
had just the
Okay.
little welcome dinner, that counted as the first day. So for this morning, this is when we are heading to Paris. So we were riding the Eurostar to Paris, and like you said earlier with Disney, you're not going to end up with seats in coach. They had us Premier Plus for our ride on the Eurostar. Also, another nice thing was the night before, they had picked up the luggage from our rooms. And so for us going on the train, we didn't have to worry about, lugging big bags and, getting a spot for the luggage. Like they took care of all that for you. Your luggage magically appeared in your hotel room in Paris and you didn't have to worry about it. You could just relax, go get on the train and, have a nice ride. So we had about a 3-hour ride to get to Paris. And again, when we got there, we were able to go straight to Montmartre. We never had to check in at the hotel when we got to Paris. That was one of those things that was taken care of, like on the motor coach. Later on in the day, all the guides just gave us little envelopes with our room keys in them. And, they had taken care of all of that. Throughout the whole trip, any place that you're going in that requires tickets to go in, the guides have already taken care of all that. So you don't have to, wait in any of those lines to get your tickets. You're just going up with a group and you've got all your tickets ready to go. Again, there are just so many things that made it great. But, a lot of those little things, first of all, save time. It is nice just to not have to worry about. So we got to Montmartre and of course stopped for our photos that we have to take. And then this was another one of the places where you had a choice. You could walk up the stairs to get up to the top where the basilica was and the little artist village, or you could ride the funicular to go up. So again, we thought we would avoid the stairs. And, all of these days, you're going to get plenty of walking in. So trust me, you did not need like the extra steps in your day. You are going to get your steps no matter what. So we thought we'd ride the funicular. However, like I said, it was a very hot day. And so actually getting like kind of squeezed into this little funicular that is not air conditioned probably wasn't the best choice. But it was a fun little ride, just, up to the top. We did decide to take the stairs down instead of the funicular again. But so up at the top, then we were able to hear a little bit of history on the basilica there. And then again, get ready for some time on our own. And so again, they were giving us, kind of tips on different places that, we might want to see, where you might want to go shopping, where you might want to eat lunch, any of those things. You also have the option during those times that if you wanted to still hang out with the guides and kind of go where they did, you absolutely could do that as well if you didn't feel comfortable walking around on your own. But I think within our group, I don't think anybody really stayed with the guides. Everybody kind of went out on their own, although you would see the guides walking around. They kind of, would still be around and kind of checking in with people as they needed to be. So when we got there, we actually were not hungry for lunch. And so we kind of started out with some of our snacks. And Paris was big for snacking. Not a lot of meals, but let's get the crepes, let's get the gelato, all those yummy things, and just kind of explore a little bit, did a little bit of shopping, and then, just kind of fun just to watch the artist and stuff that are there. Also great views because, you're up on the hill, kind of see all of Paris laid out, below you. So nice there. And let's see. After that, I think we were back to the hotel so that we could have a little bit of time to refresh before our dinner that night. So like I said, when we got to our hotel room, did not have to stop and check in, had keys to go straight to our room. Our bags were already waiting. So we kind of had a chance to, get settled in for a little bit before we headed off to our first dinner there. And then after dinner, again, had some free time. And this one, we hadn't really planned anything for our free time. And so, we just kind of walked around and explored a little bit. We didn't really, go in anywhere. Just kind of walking around outside and kind of taking it all in for that evening.
Were your hotel rooms air conditioned? You mentioned that the motor coach was. Were the hotel rooms?
Yeah, the hotel rooms were definitely air conditioned. I think that's one of the things, like you said, with just the level that you're going to get with Disney. I don't think they would stick you in one of those rooms, which is
Yeah.
definitely something you have to watch. If you're booking on your own, definitely not all the places have air conditioning, but ours did have air conditioning. Our hotel that we had in Paris, I would say not quite as nice as the one in London, but that's only because the one in London just blew us away. The Paris hotel is still an absolutely great area. They always have you in the best location so that where you are in the hotel, always close to things that you don't necessarily have to get in a car, get an Uber and go anywhere. There's always places to walk around the hotel. And kind of explore the city from there, and definitely have all the basics that you need. But the Kimpton that they had us at in London, absolutely, if I was going on my own, absolutely would do that hotel again. So all of them are nice, but the London one, just very good, very good.
That's good to know. That's good to know. Yeah, I don't think they are putting you in any one-star locations, but,
No, I'm pretty sure I mean, I didn't look technically, but I think they're all like, 4 to 5-star places. So,
nice.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
nice because a lot of times you can find these tours, guided tours like this, and it might have different levels of accommodations you could choose, it seems like, and I understand for this, it's better to keep you all together too, so,
Yeah.
they definitely seem like they're putting a lot of care into where they are putting you up for the night.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, great locations. And then also places that are able to accommodate the big group for have rooms for us all to meet together. Or you could kind of go to breakfast, when you wanted to each morning. The breakfast was included with the trip, but basically you could do breakfast whenever you wanted. And then there was always kind of another like conference room type place where it's like, okay, everybody meet over here, at 7:30 or whatever time we were leaving for the day. They kind of had those spaces to accommodate us. So we're not just all standing in a hallway or something.
Yeah.
There was nice, comfortable places to,
Yeah.
wait as we were gathering the group together.
Good.
Let me see, where are we at? Okay, so day 5. Day 5, another one of my favorite days. This was Eiffel Tower day. Lots of people, this was their favorite day because we had a 10:30 departure time on this day. It was the only day you got to sleep in. So lots of people appreciated that. But Eiffel Tower day, we get there and of course are doing our photo ops to begin with. And then we were having lunch on the first floor of the tower. So the restaurant there had a very nice lunch where, of course, you have, kind of the amazing views that were there and probably one of the best meals that we had on the trip. Really lovely meal there. So, and I feel like that's just like quintessential Paris, right? Anybody who
Yeah.
thinks about going to Paris, like you're going to go to the Eiffel Tower. So, just to be there in person, this place that you've like only seen in movies, whatever, and you get there and it was just truly incredible, to be there. So, we had our meal and then after the meal, again, one of those choice days. So you could take the stairs up to the second level for the view level up there, or you could just take the elevator back down and, go to the gift shop and kind of do whatever you wanted there. So for this one, we did opt for the stairs. Eiffel Tower, the stairs was worth it. So we did go up to the second floor to kind of get those views. To go to the very top, it was a separate ticket that you needed for that, for the elevator to the top. So, that would be something that you could do on your own time, but not something that we had time for during the tour,
Okay, because
which
I know that those lines can get very, very long, so that does make sense.
yes, and and this even to get to ride the elevator to the first floor for our lunch. This was probably the longest line that we had for the entire week. Even though they already had the tickets, just the sheer amount of people that are there and wanting to get into a little elevator. We did have a bit of a wait, but they have misters. There was all the misters to keep you cool in line while you were waiting. So, but going the stairs, kind of nice because then, obviously you didn't have to wait for the elevator. You just had to keep your breath and
Yeah.
make it up all the stairs. It wasn't as many as St. Paul's. I don't remember what the number was for here, but it still felt like a lot. But then once you got up there, definitely worth it. So absolutely recommend take the stairs when you're there. So after we had kind of that little bit of time on our own to go up there, then they took us a little bit farther away from the tower, kind of over to this little alley, because that's where you could get the best pictures of the tower. Obviously, if you are at the tower, you can't really get a picture, with the whole tower in the background. So the guides knew the perfect little spot to go to, end up on this little side street that was the perfect backdrop to get your photos with the Eiffel Tower.
Oh, I love
Um,
that.
yeah, because I mean, definitely, again, traveling on your own, you wouldn't know these little places.
Yeah.
So it was great to, get those photos. And again, they're taking those photos for you and making sure that they get good shots. I mean, our guide, Ryan, I don't know if it's just his practice being a guide or whether he has a photography background. But I mean, he knew all the poses. When we're at the tower, he's like, okay, you go up there, you do this. And he knew how to get all the shots. So it was great. This was okay, like I said, one of my favorite days because after we leave the Eiffel Tower, the next thing we had was a macaron making class. Which I am all about sweets, love dessert, definitely my favorite food group. So I was super excited to do some macaron making. We were able to, again, kind of split into some smaller groups for this. So you did have a bit of a smaller group as you went in. And they were really good about making sure that like everybody had a turn to do something and participate in the macaron making. So it was fun to be able to do that. We came away with the recipe so that we can try it out at home as well, which I have yet to do, but I definitely plan to. And because, yeah, very delicious and just kind of a fun thing that, again, macaron making is definitely something that I would have signed up on my own. I just don't know if I would have thought of it, you know?
Right.
So, so that was definitely a fun experience to have. And especially the kids, really, really loved getting to do it too. Instead of just all the traditional round macarons, we made Mickey macarons as well. So we had a lot of various interpretations of a So with our macarons, but they all tasted good no matter what. So that was fun. So after the macaron making, then it was back on the motor coach, but they gave you a choice of you could just ride back to the hotel if you were done and wanted to rest for the night, or they would drop you off at the Arc de Triomphe. So we chose to go there and, just kind of wanted to walk along the Champs-Élysées. I cannot pronounce these things correctly, but just kind of spent our time walking along and going to all the shops along there. So again, one of those nice evenings on your own. In Paris, they said they did tend to give you more of the evenings on your own just because there are so many great places to eat and, things that people want to go off on their own to do. So lots of people were very adventurous. And whenever we would get back on the coach the next day, he would ask, like, who ate the frog legs, who ate the escargot, like, all the things. And there were always people who said yes. And we're like, we had pizza again.
Yeah.
But the pizza was still very good. So, I
Yeah.
mean, we were happy. We were happy with our choice, but lots of people were, kind of getting adventurous with their meals and really taking in all of Paris. So good for them.
Yes, yeah. There's a certain point where even my adventurous eating has to stop.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. My husband went as far as duck, that he got for dinner one night, and I was just like, "Nope, we're sticking with pretty much chicken and pizza." So know that, if you are a picky eater, you can definitely still do it. I think I pretty much had like chicken or pizza for every meal, and it was absolutely fine. So I had also heard that, I mean, if you truly, truly were really picky and could not eat some of the things, that they would let you order off the kids' menu. The kids' menus often are a little bit plainer, so if just because like they give you the menu and they say you need to choose from these, three things, they're not going to let you starve. They're
That's
going to
good.
let you get
Yeah.
something. So trust me, there was no way that people were going to go hungry on this trip. Like I said, between the meals that were included, all the snacks that they were constantly giving us on the coach, you are not going to go hungry. So,
Almost like a cruise, like you were land cruising for sure.
yes, yes, definitely. Definitely. There was always food available. So, that was the end of that night. And the next day was to the Louvre. And so this one was not one where we got in earlier than everyone else, but we were pretty much like front of the line. We were there to go in right as it opened. And while you saw the long line of people stretched out, we got to go in a separate entrance that was just for groups. And so we were able to just walk right in at opening with our group and get started on the tour. So we still were able to beat a little bit of the crowds that way. And knowing that obviously the Louvre is huge, I think they gave us a statistic of you could spend all day at the Louvre for 3 months every single day and still not see everything.
Wow.
So just to give you, what the scale is of what's there. So we definitely got the highlights tour in the Louvre as we went through here. And I forgot to mention once we got to Paris, we had again our two adventure guides that were with us the whole time. But now we had local guides for Paris. And for Paris, we had not one local guide, but two local guides who were with us. So we had Alec and Catherine that were now helping us. And so at some of the places, we were actually able to split into four groups because we now had four guides helping. So the Louvre was one of the places that we did that. And so then that was nice because then you were down to groups of like 9 or 10 people in your group to be able to navigate through there. So really nice with a small group. So they made sure at the Louvre that we kind of hit the highlight some of the popular things to see. So they made sure that we got to the Sphinx, the Venus de Milo, the Winged Victory, kind of the hallway of the Da Vinci works, and then of course to the Mona Lisa, which I was absolutely not prepared for. I knew that obviously everybody wants to see the Mona Lisa, but I was not prepared to like walk into the room and see like the crowd that was in there. You absolutely felt like you were like in a mosh pit at a concert. And so they warned you going in. Like our guides told us, when you go in, this is not the place to be nice. They're like, you throw elbows if you have to. Like, they're like, people are just crazed in there. And and all to see the Mona Lisa. So you go in and it's just this horde of people and you are just like squeezed in. If you are claustrophobic, you are not going to see the Mona Lisa up close. But
And she's tiny too.
yes, it's
It's
tiny. So
very small.
you
You
do
wouldn't
have to get
think,
up
but it's a small
close.
painting.
Yeah. So, I kind of worked what you just make yourself real small and you're just kind of like working your way through and getting up there. And so, you just had to kind of be patient, be prepared for people, bumping in real close to you. But I stuck with it and I got right up there to see her and take my selfie with her. And then turned around and saw like my husband was still like a ways back. And I was like, come on. And he's like, I can see it. He didn't need to get any closer. So we kind of, backed out of there. And then but then what's funny is, they kind of have it roped off on the sides. So as we were walking out to the other room, I'm like, nobody's up against the rope. You can go right up to the rope and you can, see like the side angle of the Mona Lisa. And so he was perfectly happy with that. He saw it from that angle and that was better than dealing with the crowds to, get up there. But now we can say we've seen it. So cross that one off the list.
Yeah.
So I think the Mona Lisa was the last thing that we saw with the group portion of it. And this was another one where there was a family who they're like, okay, we've been to the Louvre before. We've kind of seen some of those, but last time we were here, we didn't get to see this. And one of the guides actually broke off and took them to something different so that they were able to see an area that they hadn't seen before rather than see the same things. So again, kind of that personalization, if there was ever anything that, we're not interested in or you wanted different, don't be afraid to ask. They were so willing to accommodate and, this is still, it's not a vacation, it's an adventure, but it's your adventure. So they want you to be happy. They want you to, have the best experience. So whenever they could, they would kind of modify things for you and make sure that you got the most of it. So that was nice.
Yeah.
But after we went through, again, we had a little bit of free time, and they always gave you that free time at the end too, so that you could hit the gift shops, because obviously a lot of people, when you're visiting these places, want to have something to take home. So we always had that time to hit the gift shops at the end. They're not, just rushing you out as you finish. So we had that time for the gift shops. And again, more snacks in Paris. I think we hit the bakery, the chocolate shop, the macaron shop, all those things at the Louvre before we left. So nice to get all those snacks in.
Definitely.
Well, let me see here. After there were so many full days, it's hard to even remember like what you did because there's just like so much. But so after the Louvre, then we headed off to the Latin Quarter. And when we got there, this was another one where they kind of gave us the information and then sent us off on our own. As we arrived, they kind of told us a little bit about Notre Dame, told us we had the option, to go in on our own if we wanted. And again, grabbing some lunch, shopping, whatever you wanted there in the Latin quarters. We did choose to brave the long line, but the guides had warned us is like, even though that line like stretched back for what looked like a mile, he's like, trust me, it'll be like 15 minutes. You absolutely have time. If we had been on our own, we never would have gotten in that line. Like my husband's like, he doesn't do that. So we never would have even attempted the line. But the guides told us, they're like, nope, it moves super quickly. It keeps moving the whole time. It'll maybe take 15 minutes. And so that was nice because, we did get to see it. And normally we probably wouldn't have attempted it if we were on our own. So I got to see Notre Dame and then again, had a little bit of lunch and a little bit of shopping. I was excited. One of my daughters, and me, both very avid readers. And so Shakespeare and Company was a very famous bookstore that's there. And so we had to go and get our book and, get our little stamp and, just one of those things again that, you do have that time on your own to go and hit those things that are important to you in some of these places. So we're able to hit the bookstore, get Notre Dame, get some lunch, kind of all those things before we got back on to the motor coach. And then our next stop was Opera Garnier. And so this one, again, they split us into the 4 groups. since we had the 4 guides with us now. And again, just, walking through and hearing, the things that they had to tell us about the building just made it, all the more special, hearing all the background. And I didn't know that it was like where like Phantom of the Opera was, based from or whatever. I was like, oh, it's just a beautiful building. But then I was like, I love Phantom of the Opera. Like, how did I not know this? But yeah, so kind of getting all those details in that they give you as really special. So after Opera Garnier, we were done with the tour for the day. So then we had time on our own. And one of the other nice things is, like I said, I didn't really book things ahead of time. But the night before, we had heard from a few of the other families that they had taken a dinner cruise with a certain company there, and they all just absolutely loved this dinner cruise that they did. So we were able to book that for this evening. So did the dinner cruise, and again, kind of getting that just different perspective, seeing a lot of the places from the water, some places that we hadn't been to yet. And then it dropped us right back at the Eiffel Tower 5 minutes before it was set to sparkle. So, the
Fun.
Eiffel Tower, is lit up at night, but on the hour it sparkles for 5 minutes. And that was my goal. I was like, I have to see the Eiffel Tower sparkle. Otherwise, I have not been in Paris. So when we got off, there was another family from our tour that was also on the dinner cruise with us. And so we made sure, like, as soon as the boat stopped, like we were standing up and getting to the door so we could get off. And we all kind of had to sprint just a little bit so we could get right to the perfect spot to see the sparkle. And I was like, this just like made my trip. Like, this was it for me. Seeing the sparkle was amazing. And this was the day before our anniversary. And so I was like, kind of, special thing to kind of celebrate that. And as tired as we should have been from, this whirlwind of a trip, the other family that we happened to be standing there with to watch the sparkle, it was amazing just to be there in front of it lit up. And we sat there talking and just visiting with the other family for over an hour. We ended up being there until after midnight, just chatting. And so we still were in front of the Eiffel Tower to start our anniversary. So that was pretty special.
Yeah, I love that. That is very special.
So
And then did you get to see, since you were there over an hour, did you see a second sparkle?
we did not see, I believe that 11 was the last
I see.
sparkle. However, we were saying that by that time we kind of started walking because you did have to go. We were right down by the water. And to be able to get a ride share, we did kind of have to go back up to the top.
Mhm.
So we kind of had, walked to a different area. So even though we were still like there, we actually were focused on kind of visiting and weren't really watching as much. It's like we knew we were there. We could feel it. We knew
Yeah.
we were there. But we weren't actually watching. But I think that 11 was the last sparkle
I
that it.
see. Okay.
So,
Mhm.
but definitely a nice way to end the evening. So our next day, back to the early mornings. And so this was our day to go and visit Versailles. And Versailles was definitely one of the things I was looking forward to. This was one of the main reasons why we put off the trip for a year. The year prior, when the Summer Olympics were going to be happening, some of the locations and activities for Adventures by Disney had to be modified during those trips. There were some places that were just unavailable because of the Summer Olympics. And so I did really appreciate that, when you were looking at that, like they told you ahead of time, the year before they had that disclaimer on there that, you weren't going to be able to go to Versailles. Something else was going to be, substituted in its place because of the Summer Olympics. And so I did really appreciate that they gave you that information because that absolutely did make a difference to me. I was like, if I'm going to be there, I want to visit Versailles. And that was another thing that made us decide to postpone the trip until we were able to go there. So I did like that they, kind of gave you that heads up on if anything is going to be different from the regular itinerary, that they know about ahead of time. They do pass that along to you to help you make your decision. So that's nice. So going to Chateau Versailles, this probably was the most beautiful place I have ever seen in my life. I mean, just absolutely incredible going through the building. I think as we were at the chateau, I believe this was another one where we were split into 4 groups. I think it's kind of hard to remember now. It might have been a 2-group one, but I know we were at least split into, some smaller groups as we were going through and hearing everything within the chateau. Um, but then, come outside and the gardens truly are just what make the place. So also, it had been raining. Everyone told us to prepare for rain in London, that London was, pretty rainy. So thankfully, we had packed raincoats. We, packed the little travel umbrellas because we thought London would be rainy. No, it was hot and sunny in London, but when we got to Paris, started raining.
Oh, no.
We did have rain on most of our days, but not enough to hurt us. As we were at Versailles, probably the heaviest rain that we had of the trip. So as we are going out to the gardens, though, spectacular guides had ponchos to hand out to all of us. So, not the cutest pictures at the Chateau Versailles, but we were dry. We had our ponchos and, we probably, I don't even know how far we walked. It was a lot of walking because the gardens are huge. They just go on and on and on. There's, lakes and fountains and just tons of manicured gardens. Absolutely spectacular. So, and the restaurant that we were having lunch at was like through probably, I don't know, like a mile through the gardens or so that you walk to get to the cutest little restaurant that we had lunch at there. So walking through, we still stopped for photo ops, even in our ponchos, went and had lunch. And then after lunch, again, you had an option. The actual activity that they had set up was bike riding through the gardens of Versailles. But because it was raining and because people just, might not choose to ride the bike, they did have an option of, you could go back and just walk back through the gardens. They did let us know that there was also golf carts that you could rent if you wanted to rent one on your own and ride the golf cart through, or you could be brave and ride the bike, which is what we did. We're like, the little bit of rain is not going to stop us. We're going to ride the bike. They said, oh, it is a very leisurely 2-mile ride around the lake. It'll be gorgeous. Absolutely was gorgeous. Wasn't quite as leisurely as they let on, though. For someone who hadn't been on a bike since they were a kid, I was like, had to remember how to do it, and, your legs are pretty tired at this point. It's been a long week, but we made it through with only minor injury. My husband tried to get off the bike and his poncho he was stopped, wasn't even riding. He was trying to get off and his poncho got caught and he landed, took a little chunk out of his arm. But
Oh,
our
no.
guide was there with a first aid kit, got him all bandaged up and good to go. So still enjoyed our bike ride there. And again, probably one of the highlights of our trip, if not just for the sheer amount of laughter that I had trying to ride a bike. And
Absolutely.
anybody who was behind me trying to watch me ride the bike. Like, I need to be at the end. I'm going to be slow. Just leave me alone. So we had the beautiful day at Versailles. And then as we got back to the hotel, this was our farewell dinner. And we were coming to the end of the trip. So farewell dinner, they took us over to a little restaurant that we had all to ourselves. It was just for our private group and had another lovely dinner. And then they had a slideshow at the dinner. And so they were able to kind of, show us a bunch of the pictures that they had taken throughout the trip and kind of a nice little wrap up of the whole trip and kind of seeing all the amazing things that we had done over the week. And so as the slideshow finished, as soon as the slideshow was done, it turns off and they're like, okay, 5 minutes, finish your dessert. We're going. And we're like they've never rushed us like this before. Like, this is kind of weird. And so they get us all up and we start walking out. Think we're walking to the coach across the street, but we don't. We just keep walking and they're walking pretty fast, which normally they, are pretty leisurely as you're going around, making sure everybody can keep up. But they took off pretty quickly this time. And we're like, what is going on? And so finally, they get us to a little bridge with the most perfect view of the Eiffel Tower. And right before 10 o'clock, And so as soon as we get up to the bridge and we all kind of get lined up, it starts to sparkle.
Oh,
And so, not everybody had done the dinner cruise
yeah.
or, gone back on their own to the Eiffel Tower. So not everybody had gotten, to see it sparkle. So now everybody had the chance to see it sparkle. And like I said, since it was one of my favorite things, absolutely amazing, that I got to see it again. And at dinner, they had passed out berets to all of us. So we all had on our little berets and, just really fun to end up the trip with one of my favorite things, seeing the sparkle once again.
That's fun. I think it's funny, which obviously you're in a tour group, but a lot of people when they go to other countries, they try not to look touristy. Sounds like Adventures by Disney is like, you're going all out tourist.
Yes, yes. But, well, and another thing that we had heard, when people heard that, we were going to go to Paris in particular, I don't think we heard quite as much about London. But, people had warned us like, "Oh gosh, it's like so scary there," or, "You have to watch, a lot for the pickpockets," and, kind of all these things that kind of scare you off sometimes a little bit, from visiting these places. And so we were prepared. We made sure, we had, purses and bags to wear
Mhm.
in the front and that locked and, all the regular precautions and stuff. But truly traveling in the group, there was not a time that we felt unsafe. And even when you were off on your own, the guides did give you little tips about maybe like, don't go here, or if you're going to go here, like make sure you do this. And, so they're there to kind of guide you through and make sure that you absolutely have a safe experience while you're visiting. And with the group, none of those people that are doing things are going to approach you when you're with a group of 40 people and your guides who are like experienced, like they know what to look for.
Right.
So that was nice. Really just make sure that you have a comfortable and safe trip.
Did they supply you in the booklet that you got with anything about dress code? Because I know some places you talked about the cathedrals, things like that. You do have to be covered up to a certain extent to even be able to go in.
Yes, yes. And they did give us all that information. And a couple things for myself, who's a rule follower. Absolutely. I had our little spreadsheet of, okay, this is what we're wearing each day to make sure we're in compliance with,
Yeah.
where we're going into. And then we got there. And if I remember right, I think Notre Dame was the only one who even remotely followed any of the dress code things, and not even all of them because it was so hot. There was one day that we were taking off. I think it was like back to towards the first day. I think it was maybe St. Paul's Cathedral. There was like, oh, hun, you can't wear shorts. Like you have to have like, knees and shoulders covered. And so he comes out in his pants and everybody else, including our guide, was in shorts. And my husband's like, you told me I had to wear pants. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I thought you had to wear pants. And so we asked the guide about it and he's like, these are their guidelines. He's like, but it's hot right now. Like, unless it's really inappropriate, they're not going to turn you away. And so he's like, tomorrow, definitely wear shorts. And so, yeah, they had given those recommendations, although not all the things were actually being followed. Like I said, a lot of those places you're going into do not have air conditioning. And so, they still want you to be comfortable. And he was like, I will make sure to tell you if there is a place that you need to have the pants. So, yeah. So we had to wash him some shorts along the trip, do some sink laundry because I had told him to pack pants.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
But and I think for the women, there was really only 2 times where people dressed up a little bit more. The Eiffel Tower lunch, they did tell us the day before, you might wanna dress a little bit nicer for, this one, for the restaurant and for, the pictures. You might wanna have something. And then before the last night, they tell you for the farewell dinner, they said, some people will dress up for that, but it's totally your choice. So you come in whatever's comfortable for you. Most of the times, like I said, you are running around like all day. So it's not like
Mhm.
you're running back to the hotel to change for dinner. Most of the time, you're just out. So you just need to be comfortable for the day. It is nice that you have like the motor coach that you're always going back to. So, you could pack the backpack and you could, be prepared with the raincoats or, umbrellas, snacks, whatever, you think you need for the day. And you could always leave that on the motor coach. The driver always stayed with the motor coach. It was always locked. So you could leave your stuff there and not having have to carry everything with you throughout the day. So, I mean, that was really nice too, not to have to lug everything around, especially if you're going up steps.
Yeah.
You
Good to
choose to
know.
do the
Good to know.
stairs.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like Adventures by Disney was an amazing experience for you. It sounds like they thought of everything and had it well taken care of, so you didn't have to have those extra concerns. So we're really excited that you were able to share your trip with us today and share it with our listeners. And I hope it encourages some of them to maybe adventure out there and try an Adventures by Disney vacation themselves.
Yes, absolutely recommend it. Yes.
Thanks so much for being with us here today, Angie.
All right. Thank you.
And that's all we have for you for today's episode. So, this was definitely a different episode for us, but also a special one. We really, truly appreciate Angie coming on to talk about her time in London and Paris with Adventures by Disney. We would love to hear from you. If you would like to send us an email with questions or comments, please send us an email at podcast@storybookdestinations.com or a Disney Life at storybookdestinations.com. Again, that's podcast at storybookdestinations.com or a Disney Life at storybookdestinations.com. You can also follow us on social media. Our Instagram handle is a Disney Life Pod. You can also find us at Facebook in our group, A Disney Life. So thanks for tuning in today for our very special episode about Adventures by Disney, and we'll see you next time.